Don't play covers. We need new originals. That's a quote I heard recently from Seth Godin, and this quote reminds me of this idea of nostalgia. Part of the reason why a lot of us continue to serve is because of what we served with before. And that's probably a very vague way of saying it. The history of what we served before, the history of who we served with before. Nostalgia is a powerful drug. Nostalgia is a powerful purpose. We talked about, especially in the Coast Guard, in our 28 leadership competencies, we talk about this idea of aligning values. Well, values invoke a sense of nostalgia. Now, we see that nostalgia being played out both positively and negatively in the public sphere today. When I think about service and continuing to serve, nostalgia still plays really heavy into that. Nostalgia in the sense of having decades of work in progress that has mostly withstood the test of time is immense. If you think about the challenge today, we are challenged by covers when the world is pushing us to become more original. And even a lot of times, the original is a rehash of the past. Star Wars is a great example, right? The latest 3 Star Wars movies, the new trilogy is garbage because the new trilogy was just a bigger version of the original trilogy. And you heard Harrison Ford's Han Solo say that in episode 7. He said, oh, it's like the Death Star but bigger. Yeah, it is like the Death Star but bigger. That should not be the movie or the story that tells us. However, that was still the movie or the story that pulled us in. That still was the movie or story to help us pay the money. Now, I'm not trying to say nostalgia is bad. I'm not trying to say nostalgia is wrong. I'm not trying to say nostalgia is negative. But it is a reason why we continue to serve. It is a reason why we keep going. It's history, right? We serve because we want to honor the history that came before us and how we became part of that history. And it's really hard to reconcile. It's hard to say that we want to continue dead reckoning and sailing in a forward direction because the past brought us there. It's really hard to think about that. It's also hard in a psychological sense because a lot of times psychologically we're reconciling mistakes in the past that are stuck in the past and we live with them being stuck. You know, a lot of times we continue to serve because we saw both good and bad examples in our past, whether it's leadership, whether it's peers, whether it's purpose, and we want to reinforce the better version of those in the future. Like we want to continue not making the same mistake. It's also a movie trope too, right? Like the Groundhog Day of always going back and replaying the story over and over again until you get it right. Nostalgia is powerful. In The Watchmen, the HBO series, nostalgia became a drug. It's even in Black Mirror in the episode where you can actually have all your sight and experiences recorded to a personal hard drive inside your brain and replay them anytime you want. Nostalgia is powerful. Nostalgia is addictive. If you think about how it's used in marketing, it is a very powerful force. It comes out to us from something guttural, from something limbic, from something reptilian. It plays and calls out to us in a way that bypasses a lot of times our own reasoning. It doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make it wrong. But nostalgia is a way why we continue to serve. Nostalgia is a way why we continue to honor and pay respect to the past and the history that made us who and what we are. So yeah, when I think about continuing to serve, I do think about it from a sense of nostalgia. I do think about the glory days and either trying to make those days better or honor the days I served with in the past. And it's not easy, right? And a lot of times we don't like talking about the good old days or the bad old days. A lot of times we don't want to say nostalgia is the reason why we're still here. But you know, you see it in terms of people who leave Friday and come back Monday. You see it in terms of not just logos and branding, but you see it in story. You see nostalgia play out in ways that ripple across generations. I just finished Harry Potter. Yes, I'm relating service to Harry Potter. I know. In Harry Potter, the great A story of Harry Potter wasn't necessarily Harry himself, but really the trilogy of characters of Harry, Voldemort, Dumbledore, and the way they each reconciled the traumas of their family's past. And each 3 of those men did that reconciliation in different ways. One was positive, one was resoundingly negative, and one was more or less closer to purgatory in how they reconciled or didn't reconcile their past, but still paid homage and honor to that past. We like the old days. All of us like the old days. Now, granted, it's a question of whether or not you have a time perspective based on a past orientation, a present orientation, and a future orientation. Organizations do have that to a certain extent. The militaries of the world have an orientation, time orientation towards the past. And maybe that's why they attract people who have a greater sense and recognition, understanding, and appreciation of nostalgia. Whereas you look at a Facebook, they probably don't have an orientation for the past because they don't have much of a past to begin with. If you think about the nation-state construct, nation-states still work as the largest political entity because there is that nostalgia of the way things were or the way we originally organized. When you talk about constitutional originalists or originals intent or founders intent, that's nostalgia. Even though though we ourselves weren't here to experience that history, there's still a recognition of what that history means, what that history looks like, what that experience was like. Nostalgia in terms of fashion is the same way. It's a powerful force. And being honest that nostalgia is a reason why you stay in helps you recognize how you can either reinterpret, reinvent, reinvigorate yourself to serve others and help them find experiences of the same resonance now to carry with them into the future.